So hello, you lovely lot. I am back for another podcast interview. And as you know, the independent spouse is all about military life and the positives about that. And traditionally, I've always interviewed other military spouses or partners who are doing their own thing. But there are a few others in different communities that have similar challenges to us, although we are all unique. And so I'm really honoured today to introduce my lovely guest. Nilma is an ambassador's wife, but so much more than that. So I will stop my nattering and going to hand over to you. Hello, Nilma. So lovely to have you here. Thank goodness for Zoom. We can talk internationally. So to start with, could you please introduce yourself and who you are and what you do?
Hi, Jess. First of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm so honored to be the first diplomatic spouse, and I hope my story is a bit inspirational for the Milspo, the military wives and spouses and husbands in your community. So I am Nilma Dole-Williams. My husband is the British ambassador to Cambodia, and but more than that, I'm in love with cricket. I love cricket, the game, the sport, name it, and I love it. I was a former international cricketer, so I played professionally. I was part of the Peruvian women's national cricket team, and I represented Peru at the WISACs, which is the Women's South American Cricket Championships. I did 2 tours for them in 2015 and 2016, and in 2016 we won the bronze medal for South America, which was an amazing achievement. I'm also a coach, so I'm a cricket coach. I have played for the Brighton and Hove Cricket Club, and I also am a level 1 and a level 2 cricket coach, affiliate, I think, to the ECB, which is the England Wales Cricket Board. So whenever I go back for the summer, taking a break from the posting, I do cricket coaching back in the UK. I'm now in Cambodia after my husband got the posting in 2022. In that year, the ICC, the International Cricket Council, gave membership to Cambodia in that year. So I thought, what an opportune time to build a cricket legacy. So I am running a few after-school clubs where I coach little kids, girls, teenagers, and I've inspired them to take to cricket. And I'm planning to open Cambodia's first cricket academy next year with the help of a school here. So very excited, and I'm so happy to be here in Cambodia during this time to build cricket. So.
Gosh, it's so exciting. We've got an awful lot to talk about. I have written some questions and I can't quite believe it. But, and now brace yourself. This is one of the questions that, as anybody who is a trailing spouse or a military spouse or any kind of somebody that's married to somebody very impressive, dreads. But we're going to do it. We're going to do it very quickly. Whip off that plaster. This is the first time I think I've ever said this out loud, but could you, and I do apologize, could you tell me what your husband does?
Okay, so my husband is the British ambassador, and it is a very important representational role. So we do a lot in the way of hosting diplomatic events. We do a lot on kind of supporting relations between Cambodia and the UK. My husband had to do, it was a mandatory requirement that he had to learn the Cambodian language. It's called Khmer. So in preparation for the job, he had to take 18 months of language training. And this was during COVID, so he did it all online. And I had to support him throughout that journey. And then in 2022, when we came here, it was quite emotional because we arrived in August, and then in September, they announced that Her Majesty the Queen had passed away. So we had to do everything on memorials, and it was quite emotional coming to Cambodia at that time. And then last year was the coronation party. So we do a lot in the way of the work, representational roles, building relationships. And I think that's kind of important. It's always very noted when you're the ambassador's wife, you invite people to the British residence, and this is where we live. We're very lucky to live in a lovely place like the British residence. But it is very noted. There's a lot of attention and emphasis placed on the ambassador and the wife, and especially in a culture as I would say a bit conservative like Cambodia. They always it's an expectation that the wife also is an extension of what the husband does. So
It wasn't that painful after all. Good. You had a great answer. Do you get asked that question a lot?
I do. I do. It's a bit difficult to kind of detach myself sometimes, and I'm really proud to be a British ambassador as well. I'm really proud because we're like the glue that sticks everyone together. We're always there to help host the events, and I think I'm in a very incredibly. I'm very lucky to be in this position to rally everyone together. But sometimes I feel like I really need to build on my identity as well. I like to be known as Nilma in my own right, not just the ambassador's wife. So yeah, so sometimes it can be a struggle, but it's really good because it complements my role as a cricket coach, as someone trying to make a difference in Cambodia, because cricket is a British English sport after all. So it's one of our objectives somewhat, but it also is lovely to be able to support my husband, but also be a person in my own right as well.
Yeah, and it's so interesting how the opportunities, if for me it's military life, the opportunities military life throws at me, sometimes it's not ideal. And I can imagine that it's similar. You probably moved an awful lot, and being able to go to a different country and have a different experience and find those opportunities within the challenges. So have you moved a lot? Is that part of what life is like as a being in the diplomatic community?
So I guess it depends. I mean, for me, I try to make the most of the opportunities that came as and when. I always tell friends back home, I said, you're like Madonna, constantly reinventing yourself. You like feel like you have to have many hats and you have to find those opportunities. I kind of stumbled into cricket like by accident. Like we were doing this tournament at the embassy in Peru. So we were posted to Lima for 4 years. And we were hosting this kind of cricket tournament at the Lima Cricket Club. And that was the first time I'd heard that Lima had a cricket club. Apparently, it was built ages ago by the British when they came to build the Callao port. And then it just kind of, yeah, people just suddenly kind of did join the club. And there's an actual cricket pitch there. So when I went there, I was really surprised that there was a cricket scene there. And then I kind of thought, wow, this is a great way. I can meet friends, I can improve my Spanish. We went there when our older one was only 5 months old. So I was a bit isolated, had to leave family behind. And I struggled a lot initially because you needed Spanish to do everything. Like it was impossible to live in that country without Spanish. But I ended up representing the country and being fluent and even got into the newspaper representing Peruvian cricket. So I think it ended up very positively, but it was a struggle. I mean, it's not easy going in, trying to find the opportunities, trying to find something you really like to do, not because you're forced to do it or because you had to do it. I mean, eventually I did an English teaching qualification. I did some like kind of volunteer English in remote parts in, like people who are underprivileged. And I did that. But it was nice. It was great at the time, but it was not my passion. It was not that put the fire in my belly that really wound me up. But for me, using cricket as a female empowerment sport in Peru was really, really inspirational because, in Latin America, women are still objectified. And it's just really sad that it's still like that. But when we brought cricket as a female empowerment sport, and we only started with 3 Peruvians in the team when I played. And now it's an all Peruvian, all Peruvian girls team. And they're so proud and they still like represent Peru in the championship. So yeah.
Which is so, it's just so impressive because so I grew up in England and really haven't, I mean, we've had the odd holiday, but we've not had an international posting. And I did cricket for, dabbled with it at GCSE and did a bit at school, but women's cricket is really starting to take off, as is all women's sport in this country particularly. But I can imagine that in other places it's not particularly viewed that well. I know that, so my background is hockey, love hockey, have always played hockey despite my poor little knees. um and I know I used to go to the women's international hockey games, and as much as we love GB hockey, I know that it's not as well loved across the world. So it must have been a bit tricky initially to get going. You played cricket when you were younger, didn't you? But it wasn't as easy as I've made out in that sentence.
No. So I was born in Sri Lanka, but I never grew up there because of the war. There was an ethnic conflict there. So my family moved to the UAE, so the United Arab Emirates. So I moved around a lot as a child. Really loved it there. It was good. But I would say I was never encouraged, even though I came from even though I was kind of exposed in the sense I lived in other countries besides Sri Lanka, but because I came from a family that was very conservative, I was never encouraged to play. My parents would be like, oh, don't go and play with the boys, or don't get your skin darker than it was because it's not good for marriage prospects. So that's one of these things where, expected to get married, quit everything and not play, sport. But I think it was in 1996 when Sri Lanka won the World Cup that I was really inspired by, Sri Lanka it was a country ravaged through war, it was a lot of violence, and they sent this really small cricket team they were all from humble backgrounds, but it really inspired me. And I thought, you know what, if they can do it, if they can use negativity as a catalyst to succeed, and on an international stage, get respect from people. And I remember the finals was against Australia, and they were really a strong team, and to beat them and to get the World Cup was just phenomenal. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. So I was like, miracles can happen. And then I thought, if they can play cricket, why can't I? So eventually I knew cricket was there. It was in my DNA, but it never really suddenly hit me until I found myself with a 5-month baby, just married, on my first diplomatic posting, and feeling lonely and isolated in Peru to go and play for the women's national cricket team. I mean, how crazy is that?
It's so brave to go, because it's so easy. I know in military life, it's so easy. We get posted all the time to all over the place. And it's so easy, especially we've been married 10 years now. We've had a lot of moves to just sort of go, you know what, I'm really tired. All I do is move and make new friends. But being brave and taking that step and trying something new. I mean, cricket with a 5-month-old, that's a very brave thing to do. What?
Yeah, no, it was not easy. My husband was very supportive. I mean, the help that you get in those countries. Like, I had a really good nanny. She was really supportive, and I used to bring him for cricket training with me. So he was just lovely, and he's so good at football now. He loves cricket, but not as much as football. But I think that kind of instill that sportiness, that drive to, go outdoors, play sports, kind of social skills as well. And I remember my first friends in Peru, they were all from the cricket team, and then I improved my Spanish. It was such a good way of learning a new culture, a new language, and also just people, just understanding Latin American culture, because you can't just go there and say, oh, this is not right or this is wrong. You kind of understand where they come from and then learn from them, but also, like I said, make a difference and do the female empowerment work that we did through the cricket, which really uplifted our lives. And it was so good to learn from them. It was like a sisterhood almost.
Yeah, the sport is so good to do that with getting together with just a bunch of people, and having something that's yours is so important, because I imagine it's really could be so easy just to fall into the ambassador's wife and just follow your husband around.
Yeah, no, that's been difficult. I mean, this is my husband's first ambassadorial job. So in Peru, he was the deputy, and then we did a posting in Nigeria in Abuja, but he was political counselor. So there was not much of you were not much in the limelight. I was kind of okay to do what I did, but now it's a bit trickier because there are things that I can do, I can't do. There's security, there's something like, the protocol. You have to be really careful, what you say. So it was really difficult to adjust. But I think even with the confines of being a diplomatic spouse or military spouse or wherever you come from, even within restrictions, you can find something to do. You should just never give up. Like, it's so easy to just be like, oh, I'm just going to host a couple of coffee mornings and that's it. And, as a mom, I'm always busy. I mean, there's stuff happening in school, but I'm like, besides that, when the kids are in school and I've done all my coffee mornings, I'm like, but I need to do something. I need to connect with Cambodia. I need to do something. I mean, I never dreamed that I would build a cricket legacy, like, definitely never. But now I'm like, you know what? I've been so inspired by this country. I went back to do my cricket coaching qualification. So I did one when I was back in the UK. So that was my level 1, and I was really lucky to get a bursary. At the time, we were in Sussex, so Sussex Cricket Foundation sponsored for me to do a bursary, and that's when I went back to Brighton and Hove Cricket Club, where I also played, to do coaching. and I became the first woman of color to do coaching there. And then I every summer I go and pick a club, and I do a lot in the way of promoting female equality and diversity to cricket in Sussex. But coming here, it was amazing because I was now rallying around kids to say, look, you can play for your country. We're going to set up a national team now, and you're going to represent your country on an international cricket platform. And it was just amazing, like just going into just after school cricket sessions, inspiring the kids and thinking, wow, these kids have so much potential, and so lovely to see it through their eyes. And they're like, so they responded to it so positively. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Maybe we might not, I mean, Cambodia might not win a World Cup, but we can at least participate. We can try really hard. So yeah, it's very inspirational.
It is, and it's very much that you cannot be what you cannot see, and you've battled through all of that and just done something really, really cool that if you'd had any doubts, or you just thought, you know what, I've got a whole host of excuses not to do this stuff, I'm not going to do it. So it's just brilliant. And that empowerment has moved you into coaching. So that's what the future holds for you, I'm assuming, because you'll be coming back to this country at some point.
Yes, so I was really lucky that recently I got a Women in Sports Leadership Scholarship. So for all the work, I mean, the volunteer work that I did as a former professional cricketer, playing and coaching in Brighton, back for my club there, and now the cricket legacy, they've, I was just so humble, so thankful that like all of my work had been seen. So I got the women, it's called the Women in Sports Leadership Scholarship. It's offered to 2 women it's awarded by the Manchester Metropolitan University, and it's a master's in sports directorship, which is a 2-year part-time course, all done remotely. And I was so inspired because last year's winner was Khalida Popal. She got the first prize. She's the captain of the Afghanistan football women's team. And they had to leave, obviously, you know, Afghanistan because of the Taliban. So she's now in Denmark doing this course remotely, but she's got asylum status there now. So it was just amazing being part of this group of scholars who are like so inspirational, and they're going out and making a difference in this world. And that's what I want to bring. Like, I want to bring all the experience that I've had, not only just as a diplomatic spouse and what I've done serving, you know, the government, British, you know, the government and, you know, His Majesty the King abroad. I wanted to bring that cricket knowledge and the empowerment aspect, the positive impact. Like, you know, here you should know in Cambodia, people have really suffered a lot with the Khmer Rouge, you know, the Pol Pot dictatorship. So many people have been massacred, and it's just such a traumatic history, and there's still generational trauma here. So in this case, I'm using cricket as an empowerment sport to say, look, no matter how traumatic your history was, you can come up, you can, you know, like a phoenix rising from the ashes, you can come and build up your country and go and represent your country and be proud of what you achieved. So I think bringing that back to the UK has always been my dream. And I thought this scholarship was just amazing to be able to go and bring gender equality, diversity into cricket back home in the UK, because it's still a very white male dominated sport. And, you know, I mean, you said it yourself, it is a growing sport, but still we have to come to the point where we still need to advocate for gender diversity, for equality. We still have to go and make a stand and say, look, we deserve as much, because the cricket now, the sporting achievements of women now in the UK is just amazing, not only in the UK, but the world. So it's very inspirational. So I'm really hoping I can do this when I go back.
Yes, and it's brilliant. And the legacy that you'll be leaving behind is going to be fantastic, because you've put the work in. You haven't just turned up for a couple of years, shaken some hands, shook some hands, shaken some hands, and then left. You have left a legacy, which I think is brilliant.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I'm really proud to be able to do that. But also, at the end of the day, I mean, it's also a message to all the spouses out there. You know, you never know what you can do. You sometimes have to take risks. You have to be bold. And that's what I would like to say. I mean, the thing is, it was hard. Like, times are tough. I felt really like, why am I doing this? I'll wake up and I'll be like, I was on tour in Rio, in Brazil, and I had to leave my son with my husband. And I was like, look, I'm going on tour, and you know, it was really hard, but I just like, it's like, what am I doing here? And you know how you feel as a mom, you get mom guilt and you're like, why? Well, I don't want to put myself first. I had to put my family first. But then I thought, you know what am I doing? Am I just going to give up? How's that going to look for other people? What sort of example am I setting for other spouses or other Milspos who are going to come? They're going to be like, oh, you know what? She just gave up easily. So I didn't want to be that person who just gave up. I wanted to say, look, I can do it. Okay. And you know, that time in 2016, to win a bronze medal, it was quite an achievement to be part of a team, to say, look, no matter how difficult it is and how amazing and you know, we were all together, we were in that community, but it was mentally draining, it was physically really challenging. But we used all of that negativity and people said, no, you can't do it. And you know, I think that's the thing. You never know when you will surprise yourself. And even when you have restrictions and you can't do things or you can't say things, or even I remember like as a diplomat spouse, you know, you can't say certain things and you have to be really careful. And I was just like, yes, I might not be able to say things, but I can do things. I can volunteer. I can make the time to help people. I can make the time to show people how to play cricket. Those little things is what matter the most, Jess. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, and what a positive way to do it. I really love it. So what's Cambodia like as a country? I'm assuming that you're living in the capital and you're probably getting a lot of culture and going to lots of places. So tell me what it's like.
Well, Phnom Penh itself is amazing. It's developing really fast. I mean, after the whole issues with the war, they've really done a lot of revamp development. There's like a lot of shopping malls now. It's crazy. In the 2 years that we've been here, it's really developed. Angkor Wat is amazing. It's an amazing cultural site. There are also these obscure sites around Siem Reap, which is where Angkor Wat is. And there are some beautiful places. I mean, there's beaches, there are some islands. So Cambodia offers a lot. And the people are just lovely, Jess. I mean, they're so friendly, they're so warm. They really go out of their way to be hospitable. And that's what we love about this culture. It's also so similar to Sri Lanka, where I was born. So I'm born in Sri Lanka. So the Buddhism, the culture, there's even a temple called Wat Langa, which is Wat Sri Lanka, because monks pilgrimage, like they will come on their pilgrimage, these Buddhist monks, and they'll stay here. And then the Cambodian monks would go to Sri Lanka. So it was this really good unity and harmony that we have. And for me, my husband speaking the Khmer, the Cambodian language, and getting that language training was just amazing, because that really helped connect us with a lot of the rural communities, the villages, and that's where a lot of our work, we try to help support, you know, development, language, and there's a lot of education projects that we're doing. So a lot of students study in the UK, and we've just opened the first British university in Cambodia literally last month. So we were like literally just but it's an amazing place to live, and no, we love it here. So come and visit.
Oh, I've got it recorded. Quick, let's go. No, honestly, get me away from the M25 and I will more than happily get on a plane and come and join you. So this life, I imagine there are similarities between this and military life. I mean, there's many differences, but the postings and the movings and potentially having a choice over where you live. I mean, what kind of say do you have with where you get posted? And do you like this life?
That's a very good question. Initially, it's a struggle, right? I mean, you know, when we fell in love with our husbands or our partners, we never kind of signed up to a life like this. And I think the challenging bit was uprooting the kids. I mean, I feel I'm quite strong and resilient. I don't know how it's like with you in the military life, but for me, I felt, yeah, I mean, constantly having to uproot the kids, but also dealing with the emotional, mental struggles that the kids face, because you get a lot of that. You have to bear a lot of the brunt. So I do love it. I do, in the sense, there are pros and cons with anything. There are times that I'm like, oh God, I can't live. I think Nigeria was particularly difficult because it was a war, like literally the Boko Haram. I mean, mainly the Boko Haram war was going on, and we were living on a compound, which is similar to what military spouses also live in. And we had military presence, so we had a defense attaché. We had all of the military presence in there as well. So it wasn't easy. But I would say the good thing about it is the communities that you build with the military. I mean, I think with the Milspos, you always have your community around you. People are so friendly, people are so warm. I still have friends whom I knew from Nigeria who are like my best friends now. And I think it depends on the country, it depends on your attitude, it depends on how willing you are to step out of your comfort zone and then go out there and make friends. We were quite lucky in the sense we had other diplomatic missions that we could make friends with. And in Nigeria, we had something called the British Club, where people would automatically come there. And it was such a big mission anyway in Abuja, in Nigeria. So automatically people would become members. But the thing was, I would say, we had defense attaches as well, who were also military wives. So I made friends with a lot of the military wives as well, because over here it's a regional attache who's based in Singapore, but in Nigeria we had, you know, the defense, the wife, and then we had a couple of others who were from other missions. So there was a really good community there where you could exchange ideas and all that. We do have a system where you can apply for a job, you don't get posted. So in diplomacy, I don't know how it's like in military, but you apply for a job, you wait for a job to come through, and that's how we choose countries off a list. And when those jobs become available, or when the person who's doing the job leaves, then we can apply. Some jobs come through, some jobs never come through. So my husband and I take a decision together to choose which country we want to go. But I guess I guess it's similar, but also it's different. So we have something called the DSFA, which is the Diplomatic Service Families Association, which comes under the umbrella of the FCDO, and they are a support scheme. So when I did my level 2 cricket coaching qualification, they paid financially for my course. So I can ask for certain things like, you know, payment of the course, or I can ask them for some career advice. There are a few people on there who do like careers, a little bit of financial assistance, tax, you know, how to do all of that work, finding a good boarding school for your kids. So like there is support within that, but ultimately it's up to us to decide what to do. There's language training as well. I got a little bit of the provision, but I didn't use it as much because in Cambodia everyone speaks English, but in Peru I did do the Spanish language training. So it depends on you, it depends on the country, but I would say we're not that dissimilar from Milspos. But the thing is, we also have this experience of moving around, going around, you know, it's still challenging, but we try to, you know, we try to keep a smile on our face.
And we need to talk about one of my favorite subjects. It's my least favorite subject, housing. So because you've listened along, you will know that part of military life is some people choose to live in military married quarters. They are magnolia, and they have some interesting curtains, but they are wonderful because it's a community and it's where we live, and happily they're subsidized, so it's not too painful if you end up like me living in central London and wondering what on earth happened, but it's not as painful financially to live here. You have a home. You obviously live somewhere, but you have a home now. It sounds like a rather snazzy one, but does that come with the job if you're posted abroad? Do you get the accommodation in a similar way that we would get accommodation?
Yeah, so the ambassador or the head of the mission, who would be the British High Commissioner or the ambassador, would normally live in the place where the residence is. Usually, like for example, in the residence here, we have our upstairs, our private section, which has a keep. So if there was an emergency, we have a secure place. But this is the public area where I am. This is where we'd host our events. Now, the deputy and the other diplomats who are lower than the ambassador, they would opt to go for apartments or houses. More often than not, if it's the deputy, they might choose to pick the house that the predecessor was living, or else they might say, look, I really don't want this, I want to go somewhere. So you have more of a choice if you are kind of like, you know, one of the employees who, you know, kind of, and we don't have a lot of British-based staff, but they all opt to live in apartments. We're the only ones who live in an actual house, like, which is the residence. But in Nigeria, we lived on a compound, but we could choose which one we wanted. Like there was the Shell compound, the village compound, so you could choose which ones, but we just automatically went for the one that our predecessor went for. So it's up to you. It's not recommended that we were going to live in an apartment. It was in Nigeria, you had to live on a compound. Any compound was fine. But the thing was, here it's a bit more flexible. There's not much of a security problem as there was in Nigeria. So I think you have a bit more flexibility. But yeah, but like in the Milspo community, they obviously support you with the accommodation, and you get like, you get that as part of your package of living abroad. And then, the kids' education's paid for, that kind of thing, which is very similar. So, yeah.
Brilliant. I won't ask you about curtains. We're going to gloss over the curtains because that's a whole other podcast series. So your role as the ambassador's wife, but also the fact that you are so brilliant in your own self, and the fact that you've created these opportunities is just so inspiring. And I love the fact that you are encouraging other people to do that. So what do you think right now would you say to I'm going to just start that sentence again. So what would you say right now to Nilma before you met your husband, who was working as that journalist back in Sri Lanka, who hadn't had any of these experiences, but here you are now doing epic things? What would you say to her?
Yeah, so about my journalism life, I mean, if I'm allowed to kind of tell you about my story in journalism. So when I first got into journalism, I was an independent journalist, and this was the time when you were not allowed to write anything against the government. So the then government actually shut down the newspaper that I worked for because they didn't like us talking about the truth. So it was really difficult because some of my colleagues were questioned. Also, it was a very difficult time during that time to work in independent newspapers. My parents were really worried sick for my life, so I went to the government propaganda newspaper, which probably wasn't the best option, but it was the safest option. And I loved journalism and I loved writing. And I really loved my job. I wanted to find a way to serve my country of birth. I mean, I'm British, of course, but I was born in Sri Lanka, but I never grew up there. So I had this guilty conscience that I wanted to serve. It was like I wanted to give back. But I felt very disjointed because I felt like I was in Sri Lanka, even though I spoke the language and I was looking like a Sri Lankan. I just felt very disjointed because I had such a different upbringing. And then when I went to work, I was like, I was in independent paper, you couldn't say the truth. And then I don't know whether you knew, but Sri Lanka protested against the government, which overthrew the government. And now the opposition leader is the president. And now there's an elections that's going to be held very soon. So I kind of felt as a journalist, it was not easy. It was not an easy time. And I anyway wanted to leave. I mean, at any point in my life, I felt like there was no future in my country. I mean, it was lovely. I fell in love with a diplomat, and now I'm prouder than ever to be a Sri Lankan-born ambassador's wife. I think I bring a lot, hopefully, to the table. But also, I'm also not the typical British spouse because I am a British ambassador spouse of color. I am not, when people look at me, my husband's tall, white, straight man. He walks in, he's a stereotypical definition of an ambassador, right? A British ambassador. Whereas I walk in, I'm like, who am I? So that was, I would say, a challenge, but I felt that played to my advantage because I could connect with people and all that. So I think, yeah, I mean, back then, I never dreamed I would be in a position like this. I just thought, okay, I'm just going to leave this country and go and be a journalist somewhere else and start, I don't know, maybe make a positive impact in a different way. I never thought cricket would be the thing that I would do. But I think looking back, I think I would say I had that burning desire to go out there and make a difference. I really wanted to go out there and fight, if that was the right word. I mean, I don't know how much of a fighting spirit I had, but I knew I wanted to speak the truth. I wanted to do something that I felt positive about. I felt comfortable because being restricted, especially working and living in a country where there was lack of freedom of speech, you were constantly being monitored, you had to look over your shoulder. It was really difficult. It was a lot of pressure to conform to this society that was pretty much, it was hard to fit in. And I remember like saying to my parents, I said, look, I just feel like I don't have a future if my newspaper is shut down and then I have to work for the government propaganda. I felt like, I don't know, I felt like I was selling my soul to the devil. It was awful. But I felt that turned it into a positive thing. I said, look, I'm going to go out there and become someone. I was lucky I met my husband. I fell in love with him. And together we knew we both wanted to change the world. And hopefully we are. Hopefully we are in Cambodia now.
Yeah, you're giving it a very good stab, I tell you now. And you're doing brilliant at it. And it's so wonderful to hear. Just such an inspiring story. So this podcast, which I've mentioned, is military themed, and that's what we do. But it's honestly, it's so brilliant having you on here because it's so nice to see the similarities, but also the differences, and also just learn about something that I know very little about. And it's so interesting to know that, but potentially, if my husband went down the attaché route, we could all end up in the same place getting to know each other. And after all, we're all just humans, aren't we? Just muddling through and doing our best. As part of the series, I added a new question, which
Okay.
always throws people a little bit, and it was always, who do you want me to interview on the Independent Spouse podcast? And the reply was always the Ministry of Defence. So I'm going to throw a question at you, and hopefully it's not going to trip you up too much. But we have always, as military partners, struggled a little bit with some of the support that's provided for us because military life is tough. I know people always want me to interview the MOD to get those burning questions to them. So I guess I'm going to spin it a little bit and say, if you were in the room with like the big cheeses, the policymakers, the people that made the decisions at the FCDO, what would you say to them about your life that could make it a little bit better?
Yeah, I think that is a very tricky question because, you should know one thing about me. I come from a background where I haven't had support in my life in general because of my culture, because this was the way that I was expected. So whatever I get from anybody it's a miracle. And even from the FCDO, yeah, they're not perfect. I mean, I can only give you my experience with the FCDO and then the DSFA, who are actually the umbrella that supports us. I would say, yeah, it's really sad. They get a lot of complaints, but it's complaints from people who expect too much. And it's hard. It's not easy. When you're not in at a posting, and if you don't understand what people abroad feel, and you're doing a desk job in London, I'm sorry, you're not going to have a sense of what actually goes on in a real life scenario. I mean, trying to explain somebody in London about what's happening, like in a country like Nigeria, bombs are going off and people are setting fire to cars. I'm like, realistically, how can you think like that? So I would say the fact that we get any support is amazing. I mean, I would say we are lucky to get some support because I've come as a journalist. I've had to deal with things myself. So I would say, that is a positive thing. But you're right, there are shortcomings and it is difficult and it's not easy. And I feel, yeah, funding, budget cuts, they're not easy. But in the limited ways that we have support, I mean, in the ways that we get support, I would say they do a good job. And there is positivity in everything. And I'm not one, to be honest with you, Jets, I'm not one of the complainers. I'm like, okay, you're not going to help me. You're not going to do this. You're not going to do that. It's fine. I'm going to get it done myself. Like I remember health is always an issue. So we have an overseas health system, and if I can't get the support here in Cambodia, I fly off to the UK because my health is my life and I don't want to risk it. I don't want to just go somewhere and somebody saying, okay, you got this wrong, that wrong, they charge you like this whole sheet of, oh yeah, this is what's wrong with you. I'm like, no, I'd rather go back to the UK. That's something I will not risk. So those things, I make decisions even if I had to pay my own money, because these are things I would never compromise with. Never compromise. Health, the help the children, what the children need. But the other things, yeah, we could be better supported for sure. But in the sense, I assume being in the same room at the big cheeses, I'm sure they'd be stressed. I think they've got their own problems already. I'm sorry, it's just, we're all human beings at the end of the day. We can't expect people to we can't expect them to be like Harry Potter, wave a magic wand, it's all fine. But I think what we have here, we should be very lucky, because going back to the UK, seeing the way people are suffering with the cost of living crisis and going through all of that, it's not bad what we have. Yeah, things could get better. But I think I'm very lucky because I come from a culture where nobody's even asked me, how are you doing? Are you okay? And here I'm on Zoom calls with people, and I was like, actually, how are you? Are you okay? And that means a lot. That means absolutely a lot. So yeah, sorry, probably not the answer you were looking for.
No, it's brilliant because it's the adversity thing. You have found a fiddly life, but you found the opportunities for it and you are blooming wherever you were planted, which is one of those phrases that we throw around. But it's so important because military life for me is hard and there's many hurdles to jump over. But talking to people like you and realizing that I'm not alone and that the opportunities that you have made from it is just so brilliant and so inspiring, which is why I'm so excited to share this, even though you're not fitting into the military wife mold. That's absolutely fine, because it's just interesting to know everybody's story and what they're up to. So before we finish, is there anything else that you would like to add or say about cricket, about your life, about being an ambassador for Britain abroad?
Well, I can just give you an advice. I mean, I've been listening to your story. I was really inspired by your story. I mean, the whole Whitney thing, it really touched my heart, Jess. I am sorry. I mean, if I was there, I'd be like, Jess, come on, let's go and make a difference. Because I think it's really difficult. It's really difficult. Sometimes you're in a new place and you don't know anyone and you're not sure what's going on and you want to make a friend. And the only person you speak to is the person at Sainsbury's. I mean, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry you had to have like, that experience, which was, yeah. But I would say I was like, I mean, when I first got into it, I was like, yeah, I was a bit upset and I did find it a struggle and it was hard. It was difficult. But I think the thing was, I think what I'd say is no matter where you are, no matter where you've been posted to as a military spouse or a diplomatic spouse or a trading spouse, and you're not sure what's going to happen and what you need to do, just find something, just mentally, physically, emotionally, go and do something. I mean, now on YouTube, you have stuff to do. You can learn how to play a guitar. You can do anything. Just think of that negativity and turn it into something positive, because the last thing you want to do is to lose yourself and then just like make yourself feel really sad that there's no coming back from that. So I would say what really inspired me a lot from seeing all the spouses, including some of the military spouses I have encountered in my journey as a diplomatic spouse, is how resilient and how brave we are and how we have a community. It doesn't take a lot to just call a friend and say, look, I need some help. Come for a coffee. Let's make an effort. Let's do something. And yeah, I've struggled a lot. Like I remember one time in Nigeria when bombs were going off, I would just do like, I would just call up a friend and I'd be like, let's do something. Let's dance together. Let's sing. Let's do a Zumba class together. And at one point I was baking cakes and I was smuggling them to cafes and you couldn't go out much. So I was like finding every single window of opportunity to try and slot myself in there. And I would knock on doors. And I think people are sick of me, like frankly sick of me, because I would just knock on and say, look, you have to run this story. You have to do this. Or you do that. But one day somebody opened the door. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So I'm like, you always think, oh my God, I can never do it. My husband or my partner or my wife, they're the officer, they get the medals, they get all the recognition. Nobody sees me. But you know what? You are allowed to show yourself. Give yourself permission to go out there. When I became a cricketer for the Peruvian national team, I thought there was a restriction because of conflict of interest, but there was nothing like that. In fact, they couldn't be happier. And now a few other diplomats and their wives already, like, they played for Peru as well. And I've just set this off. So building that legacy is not what it's all about. Of course, I mean, I was lucky. I got the chance to do that. But what I would say is find every opportunity. And even if people say no and people tell that you're going to fail and people are going to say, no, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Just don't, just block it all out. Just go and do what you want to do. Believe in yourself and find your passion and your dream. And don't let anyone take that away from you. Honestly, because I wouldn't be here today if I listened to every person saying, no, you can't do this. And as an ambassador's wife, just be quiet, stop talking about this. And I'm like, yeah, I might not talk about that topic. And yes, I might not be allowed to do it, but I'm allowed to do something. And I'm very proud of it. And that's the thing I would say, just never give up.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. That is just the perfect place to finish. It has been so, honestly, so lovely to talk to you. I did worry when you first emailed, and I was like, but it's a diplomatic wife, and she's the ambassador's wife, and I don't know what do we call her? Do I curtsy? I have no idea. But
No, just be myself.
there's no, thank goodness, because I didn't. And I dropped the ball. But it's just been so lovely to hear your story and just to hear what you have achieved, because it's so easy to disappear into the shadows when we have an impressive partner, but we are more than impressive. So I'm so glad that I got you on the podcast and I'm able to share your story, and it is going to inspire some other people. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. And thank you, Jess. You've been so inspirational as well. I mean, just hearing your story and seeing what you do in your business that you've created and all this amazing podcast. I think I really admire you. I think you've just been an inspiration to me too. And I think it's so mutual that we have this lovely community. And I hope like good luck to you too. I know you're a success, but good luck to you. Anything that you pursue and put your mind to. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're
Genuinely.
so welcome. It's all smoke and mirrors. Don't fall for it. When are you back in the UK? Are you coming back soon?
Christmas, yeah, we're back
Yeah.
for Christmas. So yeah.
Oh, lovely. Well, we'll have to grab a cup of tea, but thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jess, and good luck with everything. And yeah, we'll be in touch.